Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. As Chris said, I'm Alan Lowe. I'm the Executive Director of the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. We're really glad to have you here on this very special day in the history of this institution. Today, thanks to the incredible generosity of the descendants of Reverend Noyes Minor, and especially Sonder Willingham and William Prescott Wolcott, we are announcing to the world the acquisition of a truly wonderful piece of history, a Bible owned by President Abraham Lincoln. Now, artifacts, I'm supposed to do this now. There you go. Artifacts like this one connect us to the past in a real tangible way. I love to say that artifacts and documents are, in a way, the raw material of history. Our terrific crew here is going to tell you more about both the Bible and the donors. I just want to say this donation is much, much appreciated. We will make sure it's not only preserved for future generations here at the ALPLM, but also used to teach and to inform. This Bible can tell a lot of stories. The story of Lincoln's beliefs, their evolution over time, is a fascinating one that tells us much about our 16th president, how he viewed himself, the world around him, and the future of our nation. It also tells stories about Mary Lincoln and her desire to protect the legacy of her beloved husband. This beautiful Bible you're seeing right here takes us back to the Lincoln White House. Just think of the history that this Bible has witnessed. After the press conference this morning, the Bible will be moved and placed in a case in our Treasures Gallery, and it can be viewed there the rest of this calendar year. So thank you again for being here, and now Ian Hunt.
Good morning. My name is Ian Hunt. I'm the Chief of Acquisitions here. From the first moment that the family walked into the library last October, they began an incredible dialogue with us. They were incredibly generous. They were incredibly humble. When they walked in, it was interesting. They asked me, do you by chance know who Reverend Noyes Minor was? And I said, of course. He was a neighbor of the Lincolns. He was a friend of the Lincolns. He was important not only in the president's life, but also in Mrs. Lincoln's life. And the family was astonished. They said they didn't expect that kind of a reception here. Very quickly, we moved to talking about some of the items that the family still retained, the Bible being the most important. And they said, you know, we are looking for a good home for this place. We're looking for a good home for this item. We feel that maybe this is the right place here in Springfield where Mr. Lincoln had lived. Eventually, we agreed that the Bible would need to be transported from where it was located in San Francisco, California. So Director Lowe and myself went out, retrieved the Bible. Very interesting story. We talk a lot in the museum world about the power of artifacts and how they can really move people, how these kind of inanimate objects touch people's lives. And I can tell you firsthand that I've already seen that emotion. When we were walking through San Francisco International Airport and passing through the TSA lines, we had a private screening, of course, because of the item. We had arranged that ahead of time. We had a representative from United Airlines traveling with us to make sure that we got to our flight properly. And when we went into the private screening room to show TSA that we were, in fact, carrying a Bible and not something evil or infamous, the United Airlines representative literally teared up and had to walk out of the room, just simply looking at this item. This is the power that these artifacts hold. This is the power that will continue to be wielded across all visitors who visit this institution. I cannot thank again enough the entire family, and they will be coming out to see this item hopefully in the very near future. I believe we're talking about later this summer that the entire family is going to make the journey here. For all those who still hold items related to the 16th president, I would remind them that we are always willing to talk, we are always happy to receive items, and we are always so very thankful for the public's generosity. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Samuel Wheeler. I'm the State Historian of Illinois, the Director of Research and Collections here at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. From an interpretive standpoint, this new addition to our collection, it challenges us to think about Lincoln's evolving religious views, a topic that has provided a century and a half of spirited debate. We're reminded how the 16th president grew up in the home of God-fearing parents, But when he set out into the world on his own, he embraced skepticism and at times even demonstrated a hostility to many of the claims in the Bible. Yet after enduring personal tragedies, frustrated ambitions, and ultimately the horrors of civil war, he forged a new, deeper relationship with his Maker, and he came to understand more greatly the active role that God sometimes plays in human events. Beyond Lincoln's personal beliefs, this Bible is a reminder that the Civil War was indeed a people's contest that greatly impacted society far away from the battlefield. As soon as the war began, soldiers wrote letters home complaining about the rough conditions of camp life, the lack of basic supplies, their poor diets and hygiene, and the awful conditions for the wounded in military hospitals. So the United States Sanitary Commission was founded to improve their lives. Subsidiary organizations raised money for the commission by soliciting donations and conducting fundraisers like concerts, lectures, and plays. Perhaps their most successful fundraising efforts were a number of fairs that took place throughout the North during the war. And one of the greatest was the Great Central Fair, held in Philadelphia from June 7th through the 28th of 1864, 155 years ago this month. On June 16th, 1864, Abraham Lincoln accepted an invitation to attend the Philadelphia Fair, and he spent the day with his wife and his little boy Tad. They browsed the nearly 100 booths featuring exhibits and goods that were for sale. The organizers doubled the admission costs that day. A record crowd turned out to see the president deliver a speech. He praised the people for supporting the war effort and the soldiers. Two local abolitionists printed 48 copies of the Emancipation Proclamation. They persuaded Lincoln to sign them, and they sold those copies at the fair. Today, 26 of those signed copies survive. And since 1937, ALPLM has had one of those copies in our collection. That evening, Lincoln attended a reception. He received the thanks of the fair's organizers as well as a number of gifts from the subsidiary organizations. This Bible was one of those gifts that Abraham Lincoln received that night. He received it from the ladies of the Volunteer Hospital of Philadelphia. The fair went on to raise over $1 million. In addition to reminding us that the war was a people's contest, the Bible also brings the president's wife, Mary Lincoln, into greater focus. This Bible's a tangible reminder that Mary Lincoln played an active role in guarding and shaping her husband's legacy. After the assassination, her husband's law partner, William Herndon, began writing essays and eventually a book, as well as giving interviews and delivering lectures focusing on topics like Lincoln's alleged heartbreak over the death of his one true love, a suggestion that he did not love his wife, the mother of his children. And he contended that Lincoln was not a Christian, but instead he was an atheist. Mary Lincoln was outraged. She wrote letters to her husband's friends. She encouraged them to refute those allegations that she viewed not only as wrong, but harmful to the way her husband would be remembered. And one of the people she turned to for help was Baptist minister Noyes Minor. The Minor family lived across the street from the Lincolns in Springfield for about 5 years. And by all accounts, they were very friendly with the Lincolns. During the Civil War, Reverend Minor visited the White House and he spent time with the Lincolns as they were grieving the loss of their little boy, Willy. After the assassination, Reverend Minor continued to play a role in Mary Lincoln's life. When she needed help refuting Herndon's allegations about her husband's faith, she understandably reached out to Reverend Minor. And to show her appreciation for his friendship and for any help he might offer, she gave him this Bible. For the next 2 decades, Reverend Minor refuted Herndon's hurtful allegations by maintaining the Lincoln who he knew was not the man who may have voiced skepticism in his youth. And it certainly was not the man he spent time with in the White House during the war. For the rest of Reverend Minor's life, he fiercely defended Mary Lincoln from her many detractors. In one final act of friendship and compassion, shortly before Mary's death, Reverend Minor successfully lobbied Congress to increase her yearly pension to $5,000 a year and provide her with a gift of $16,000. Reverend Minor treasured this Bible that once belonged to the 16th president and was given to him by his widow to document a steadfast friendship. And finally, this Bible is ultimately a testament to a family's desire to preserve its link with the past, and now, by donating it to the ALPLM, we are grateful Reverend Minor's descendants have decided to share their connection with a worldwide audience, as well as with the scholarly community. Thank you all very much for being here today. So it's a good question. Why did the ladies give Mr. Lincoln this Bible? It's what I would call a presentation Bible. It's not a Bible they probably expected Mr. Lincoln would keep in his pocket and open up and read throughout the Civil War. This is something to be displayed. And so they have a beautiful cover on there commemorating their gift to Abraham Lincoln. Mr. Lincoln, at this time in his life during the American Civil War, he's increasingly using biblical rhetoric. He's quoting from the Bible. He's on the eve of really giving his second inaugural address, which folks at the time recognized that it didn't sound like a political speech. It sounded more like a sermon. During times of tremendous tragedy, Lincoln is a lot like all of us. He's going to look towards things like the Bible to try to find some comfort, and most of all, try to find some answers. What is God's plan? Why does America have to suffer so horribly during the Civil War? I think by presenting this Bible to Mr. Lincoln at the Sanitary Fair, the ladies are making a recognition of all those things. No, we don't know what the value is. The value of it, we don't know what the value is in terms of today's dollars. We can tell you as a museum artifact, it's priceless. It's one of a kind. It's irreplaceable. It is that tangible connection that we have with Mr. Lincoln, and gives us an opportunity to talk all about those stories that I briefly outlined earlier. You know, in my view, Lincoln and religion is one of the most debatable topics in Lincoln historiography. We have been debating that topic for a century and a half. It begins, as I said earlier, with William Herndon, his allegations that Mr. Lincoln was a skeptic in his youth. But certainly that's not the Lincoln that we've come to know in the Civil War. By reading his public speeches, by seeing the private memoranda that he's writing during the war, like a document that is absolutely beautiful called Meditation on the Divine Will, where he is trying to search for and figure out what's God's purpose in the Civil War. During the Civil War, there is an evolution that takes place in Mr. Lincoln's religious thought. He is searching for God's purpose. He's redefining his relationship with his Maker, and he's trying to figure out what is God's purpose in this war. He's talking about an active God who sometimes plays a role in human events, and I can tell you that I believe that he believed he was one of God's instruments by the end of his life. He believed that God was using him to end American slavery.
Is there any information
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong up here. I don't think we know exactly where they kept this Bible in the White House. Mary Lincoln certainly has access to it because in 1872 she gifts it to the Minor family. That's about all we know of it during the White House. The story from the family that has trickled down to us is, and we confirm this when we look through the pages of the Bible, is that there were a number of ribbons, bookmarks, if you will, scattered throughout the book. The family told us that Mary had told them that her husband had placed those markers in the book. So he may have leafed through it, he may have read certain passages that meant something to him. And we've made notes of where those bookmarks might have been. In terms of a pocket testament, there are accounts that Mr. Lincoln kept a New Testament handy on his person as well as a daily devotional. We don't know exactly where those ended up. There are a number of Lincoln Bibles that exist at other institutions around the country, including the Library of Congress, including the Lincoln birthplace, etc. The bookmarks were here. The bookmarks were in that Bible. We made notes of them. It was 4, half a dozen, something like that. Various books of the Bible. I don't remember offhand, scattered throughout. Yeah. Could I impose on our chief, our conservation person, Bonnie Parr, to talk briefly about that? This is our Director of Conservation's Bonnie Parr. She does a wonderful job for our institution, and she took the lead in that role.
Thanks, Bonnie. Well, good morning. So the extent of what we have done so far is barely we have done a condition examination of this Bible. Not actually done any treatments because actually it doesn't need anything right now. We did just a little bit of cleaning. Did examine page by page, and to say all the bookmarks are there in the Bible. They are ribbons. They are silk ribbons, different colors. There's no other notations in the Bible, but I've just wrapped the ribbons in an acid-free paper cover, and they're in the same spots where they were. The reason why I can tell that they have been there in a long time is the silk or the colors of the silk were acidic, and they have there's like a shadow of the ribbons where they've been placed in between the pages, and that's kind of transferred to the brown staining color. And so we know that those ribbons have been in there for a while, but there's no other indications of how long that's been. There is evidence that this Bible has been treated in the past. The leather spine, there's a newer leather underneath the original. It's a lighter brown color. So this has had some conservation treatment in the past. But as far as what we have done is just a minor cleaning, thorough examination, documentation, and a protective enclosure, a box to house it in storage, keep it from dust and light.
No, we have very strong provenance on this. It stayed in the family. The plaques on both sides, it was presented to him, and then Mary presented it to the family. And there's also a letter that talks about her gifting the Bible to the family. So with provenance is very strong.
It was hard to hear you at the beginning.
Yeah.
You made a statement about the connection, the various connections. Can you repeat that?
In terms of the connections.
What it means to history.
Of course. Well, I think as Sam said very well as well, there's so many stories the Bible can tell about his views on religion, about Mary's protection of his legacy. And what we do here is preserve history, but also use artifacts, use documents to teach, to engage people. And this is one of those priceless things where we know there's a direct connection to Abraham Lincoln, and we're able to use it as that type of tool, frankly. So we want to preserve it. It's priceless, as Sam said. But beyond that, it has a real usefulness for us as an institution. We exist not just to preserve, but to teach as well. Yeah. Well, I hope that people know throughout the nation and the world that we are very dedicated to what we do in terms of preserving the legacy and presenting the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, that we are good custodians of the materials that we oversee, that we take care of them, that we utilize them in the proper ways to teach and to inspire. And I hope that folks around the world know that. This is an amazing institution. I'm proud to be director of it. Yeah. You never say never. So essentially, loans go through the process of where you ask, and we have to look at what your facility is, what security is, what you're going to use it for, that type of thing. There'd have to be a good reason for it, though. I kind of like it. I don't want it to leave. But no, that's what museums do. They do loan artifacts often if it's in a good enough shape to travel. And that's why I turn to Sam and to Bonnie and others and say, can it travel? Is it safe for it to do so? And then is it safe for it to go to that facility? Yeah. So the Treasures Gallery is where we show off some of our most amazing items in our collection. as part of the standard museum tour. And in the inner sanctum, as I call it, the inner circle of that treasures gallery is where this will be displayed starting later today. Right after this, they're going to put it in that case, and it will be there through the rest of 2019. Oh boy, come on in, guys. You put those in the inner sanctum. What's in there? Is the powder horn still in there right now? Yeah, those things. Yeah.
Yeah, Greg, we have, any day you come through the museum, you'll see about 100 pieces on display. The Treasures Gallery is our place in the museum where we can put kind of some of our most favorite pieces, some of the most rare pieces. So currently in the Treasures Gallery, we've just switched that out in January, and there's a shaving glass, so a mirror that Abraham Lincoln would have looked in before he became president as he's shaven during the day. It's a pretty amazing piece. There is currently a powder horn that helps tell the story of Abraham Lincoln during the Black Hawk War, for instance. There is one of my favorite pieces that's in the Treasures Gallery right now is a letter written by Willy Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's little boy shortly before he passed away, where he is telling one of his little friends here in Springfield about the death of the soldier Elmer Ellsworth. This little boy has such beautiful little handwriting, and he's not shielded from the horrible details of the Civil War in that letter. So just a small snapshot of some of the pieces that are on display.
We had a special case that we took out with us to San Francisco. I had notified TSA ahead of time of what we were going to be bringing through and that we were going to need from TSA private screenings under most circumstances. I explained to them ahead of time. I'd called the Washington, D.C., the head TSA. They said, that's fine, we can make all of the arrangements for this. So I was physically carrying it in its very special acid-free box. When we got to the airport, the United representative walked us to TSA. We informed them who we were, that we were ready for the private screening. They brought several TSA officers over, and they took us into a private room. During the course of it, they said, we need to see inside. You know, we know you've said what it is. I opened up the box, I unwrapped the paper, I showed it to them. I displayed the front, which is actually when the United representative began to tear up. And I said, would you like me to open it so that you can see that there's nothing embedded within? And they said, please. And I just randomly opened it about halfway and showed them the pages. They were, for the first time in my flying history, they were way more interested in what I was carrying than me. They stood there just kind of in awe. It was clear that they were more museum guests at that point than they were Transportation Safety Administration. They said, thank you, it's been taken care of. We wrapped it back up, we put it back in its protected box, we finished the rest of the screening, and then I got on the flight. And it never left my side from the moment that we received it from the family to the moment that the director and I placed it in the vault when we landed in Springfield. No, I would say this is, right now, this is the home run shot. I've gotten to travel with a number of exciting pieces, but this was amazing, truly.
Yes, history is so important to our future. I think that nowadays a lot of people think that it's a boring recitation of facts, something that you're kind of made to learn in part, and then you go on with your lives. And I think history is so important to us every day. It gives us perspective. It gives us lessons. It really roots us in a way that we need, I think, as a society, and certainly as a republic. Not to get too philosophical here, but we can only be engaged citizens if we understand our history and how our government works. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So I think that's why, one of the many reasons I love what I do, because we preserve and we teach that history.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming. We're going to move this now so the photographers and videographers can... That's what I'm doing. But I mean, do you need us to hold it or something? Sure, if you want.